guys, it's Jackie.
And I'm Jada.
Today we're going to talk about the differences of using Google Meet versus Zoom. So Jada, what's the first thing we're going to talk about?
The first thing, and probably the biggest thing, is time limits. So I'm sure we've all run into it where you get that little like notification of just a few minutes left and you're like, oh no, we still have so much more to cover. With Zoom, it's 40 minutes, and with Google Meet, it's 60 minutes.
With the free on both of them.
With the free.
Obviously, if you pay for it, you can get, I think, probably 24 hours.
So if you're doing a lot of meetings, doing big group meetings, I would say just pay for it so you don't get annoyed with that. Hey, your meeting's about to,
But just factually to know, 40 minutes on Zoom and 60 minutes on Google Meets.
Yes.
Awesome. Now we're going to talk about participation capacity. So this is a big one, I think, if you're using either of them for a webinar or anything like that. Participation capacity. So if you're using this for a webinar, this would obviously be very important to you. If you're using Google Meets, they actually max you out at 250. So you cannot have any more participants than 250. And that's actually a pretty low number if you're trying to do a webinar. So with Zoom, you can go all the way up to 1,000 people. Still maxing out, but 1,000 people is a much higher number than 250. So that's pretty big difference.
Basically the town that I grew up in. So if you
there you go. That's a big difference.
It's a lot for me. So
yeah, exactly. It's awesome. So I mean, that's a big one to consider as well.
And if you are doing webinars or maybe some team building exercises, you might want to utilize breakout rooms.
That's a big one. Mm-hmm.
So with Google Meets, you actually have to have the paid version for breakout rooms. Zoom, you can do it on the free, but like we said before, there are those time limits. So you might just want to, again, do the paid version.
Yeah, exactly. And a big clarification here too, we have to talk about because I feel like with Zoom, obviously it's a completely different app. You have to pay for it. If you're paying for it, you know, you're paying for it. Google Meets is obviously in your Google Suites. So if you're paying for your Gmail account, so if you have it at your domain, you are paying for it. So all the features, when we're saying that you're paying for it, you would have that included if you're using it. So kind of just a little bit of clarification there on that.
Yeah.
So next one we're going to talk about is recording meetings. This is a big one. So if you have Google Meet, like I said, if you're paying for your G Suites with Google Meets, you have to pay for Google Meets to be able to record. If you don't pay for it, so you have just a normal Gmail account, you literally can't record it. Not an option at all. Zoom, if you're paying for it or not paying for it, they allow you to record the meeting. So that's a pretty big one on that one.
Yeah. And going right along with recording your meetings, you're going to want to watch them back. And maybe you want to use closed captioning so that, you know, if you have someone that's maybe hearing impaired on your team, or if you're like me, who often forgets her earbuds places and doesn't want the coffee shop that you're working in that day to know what's going on, but you still need to watch something. With Google Meet, the closed captions are already provided for you. If you're working with Zoom, you need a third-party integration to get those closed captions.
Yeah.
I am not very tech savvy, so I would choose Google Meet for this option.
Fair enough. Yep. Good point. And the last one we're going to talk about is cloud storage. So same thing. If you're paying for Google, then you're paying for your Google Meets aspect on there. They give you actually 15 gigabytes of storage. With Zoom, it's completely free. So that is a huge plus, but with Zoom, you only get 1 gigabyte of storage on the cloud. So that's a little bit of a difference there. So Jada, we've talked about all the pluses and minuses of Google Meet versus Zoom. What do you choose to use?
Honestly, I go back and forth. I don't necessarily have a preference, but we use Google Suite for everything. So I feel like I gravitate more towards Google Meet just because it's already there and we do use the paid version.
Yeah.
And I like my background better on it. I'm sitting in a nice little like rainy coffee shop instead of, you know, my apartment in Las Vegas.
Fair enough. That's fair. And we never get rain in Vegas. So you need
and I miss it. So that's usually what I go for.
Okay, there you go. For me, I would say, honestly, I always use Google Meets only because of I use a Google Calendar, and on Google Calendar, it obviously always auto populates it, which was a little bit of a pet peeve of mine at first because I hated that because then I would add the Zoom description, and then without fail, I was sitting in the Zoom, and then people would be sitting in the Google Meet, and I'd be like, "Hey, where are you?" And they'd be like, "I'm in the Google Meet," and I always had to clarify, and that's annoying. You have to go delete it. So I actually use Google Meet. So there's our perspective on it. That's what we use, but there's a little bit of facts for you both ways. So make sure that you follow us along for more tips and tricks in the virtual world.
We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.